morning, everyone. Welcome to our Garage Insurance Coverages Made Easy webinar. This is one of our Garage 101 courses, and we're gonna make you start you out being a garage expert so that you can write a little more garage. My name is Zane Augustini. I'm CEO of CID Insurance Programs. I want to introduce Teresa Cochran, who's our garage underwriter, and she's going to be our presenter today. Say hi, Teresa.
Good morning. Hi, everybody.
And then Jacob Cole, of course, is our marketing coordinator, and he will be running things from behind the scenes. Go ahead and say hi, Jacob.
Hello, everyone.
So let's get started. We've got logistics and objectives. So everyone that pretty much knows the logistics these days, you're as a participant when it's a webinar, you're going to be muted, but you will be able to hear, of course, but not speak. Your questions are super important to us, so please pose them in the chat room throughout the webinar, and we will stop and answer them as they come in. And now, what are we going to talk about today? We are going to focus on how to complete a garage application, because it's sort of a custom application that deals with different coverages than a property general liability and property insurance would normally deal with. So we're going to be talking about the coverages that are unique to the garage form. And then furthermore, that is super important, is to identify what coverages are needed for each garage risk that you come across, and then how to have that conversation with your potential insured. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Teresa to get started.
All right, so today I'm going to guide you through our garage application, and we've broken it down into sections so we can discuss the different coverages available, what I'm looking for on the underwriting side, which in turn will help you ask your clients necessary questions and identify what coverages your client may need for their business. So our first section is understanding the auto exposure, how our auto is stored, the possibility of other installed product sales, and pickup and delivery of customer autos and towing. Next slide, please. All right. So we have some highlighted areas, as you can see. Question 2 here. I need to know how autos are stored at the repair shop or dealership after hours, and that's going to help me determine what the theft and vandalism exposure is looking like. Moving down to question 4. This one is overlooked quite often when I'm reviewing applications. So what we're looking for are auto sales receipts, repair receipts, and other installed product sales, which could be things like accessories, merchandise, or auto supplies, and other auto parts that aren't being installed by our customer who owns the business. Are they offering a pickup and delivery service, or are they towing for hire? Do they maybe tow a customer's vehicle to the repair shop? These are things we can definitely consider and accommodate. I just need to know so I can be requesting MVRs for these drivers, and see how much of the driving exposure we are taking on. All right, the next section. And the next slide, please. All right, this next section is going to be a broad overview of the garage application, where we go over dealer plates, employees, which is very important, furnished drivers, and the types of autos being sold or worked on. All right, I know question 10 isn't highlighted, but I do want to look at that one for a moment here. It's another one that definitely is overlooked on the application, or it's assumed to be not applicable, but it does need to be brought up with your client. Repair shops and dealerships may use a subcontractor. I know that sounds kind of strange, but sometimes they need outside help to repair a vehicle, and we want to make sure these outside people have their own insurance in place just in case something happens to our vehicle while it's in their care. If those people don't have coverage, then we're going to have to cover it. So we do want to make sure that those subs have their own insurance in place while the car is in their care. Jumping down to question 11, it's referencing contract drivers. Contract drivers are persons hired on a temporary basis to pick up and or deliver an auto, and they don't have their own commercial insurance in place. Some dealerships use these types of contract drivers, which is fine. We just want to make sure that we get this section completed so that we can rate for them. And, some dealerships do have contract drivers that they use on a regular basis, and those would actually be put on the employee list. All right, question 12 is going over loaned or leased autos to others. And, a lot of time repair shops will have an auto that they do loan to somebody. We just want to make sure that there's an agreement in place. Some of my markets may be able to accommodate one loaner vehicle, or they may not, and we just want to make sure that the customer has coverage elsewhere for those vehicles.
And Teresa, are they
Yes.
just requiring a copy of the agreement?
Yes, they're going to require a copy of the agreement, but if it's with a company, with one of our carriers that is not okay with loaned autos, not only are we going to request a copy of the agreement, we're also going to request a copy of the insurance for that vehicle so that we don't want to be on that auto if the carrier is not comfortable with the loaned exposure.
Got it. Great.
Okay, now we're going to get into dealer plates here, the last question on this page. How many dealer plates do they have? How are they being used? How are they stored when they're not in use? These are all questions to pose to your client. The next slide I actually put brief descriptions of what a dealer plate is and also what a translator plate is. And if you wouldn't mind going to that next slide, you guys are going to be getting a copy of this, so you're more than welcome to read through it. But again, it's just a brief explanation of what the difference is between the plates. I typically don't see transporter plates very often. It's mainly the dealer plates that we come in contact with. All right, now we're getting into the employee list. This is a very important one. So whether you have clerical workers, contract drivers, salespersons, mechanics, owners that are not active in the business, and then you have active owners. We need all these people included on this list here because they all need to be rated for differently. And when inspections come around, we really want to get this right up in the beginning. We don't want to be going back to the insured asking for more money because people were missing from this list here. That's never a fun position to be in as a broker, and on my end too. We don't want to have to come to you saying, hey, no, we need to endorse this policy because they missed a couple of mechanics, or there was a silent owner that wasn't included. So if we can get this right first time around, that would be amazing. One column on here that I want to point out is the furnished auto question. A lot of people don't understand what this means. If an owner or a worker is driving an auto off of the lot for personal use, they are considered a furnished driver. But let's say you want Sally at the front desk to go drop off some money at the bank, and you let her use, a Lexus off of the lot, that's fine because that's personal use. That's for business use, excuse me. But anytime someone's given an auto for personal use, then we would be consider them a furnished driver, and we would have to put yes in that column, saying that they are furnished an auto.
Does that impact the rating of the policy?
It will, because when you're a furnished driver, that increases your driving exposure, which poses, that's heavier on the liability side if, they were to get in an accident and had to report a claim. So yes, furnished drivers do have a higher rating than your business use only drivers.
And do they audit this exposure at the end of the policy period?
Typically, garage policies aren't audited.
Okay.
The carrier definitely can audit, but I've been doing this for 10 plus years, and we haven't seen a garage audit. It's not really until a claim occurs when things like this become an issue, when non-reported drivers are an issue.
Okay, that's a really good point. Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to the next slide. Head over to question 19 here. So this question is asking if anyone else has access to vehicles. Maybe the owner's daughter who isn't active in the business, but maybe he lets her drive a car. Or, a best friend is allowed to use a vehicle for personal use. We will want to add those people under this question. And the last question here on this page is asking for a percentage of operations, repair versus sales. And it's also broken down by the type of auto. This is an important one that I need completed as accurately as possible because this is what I use to help underwrite. And it's also going to help me determine which carriers I can go to. Some carriers are okay with repairing buses while others aren't. So this is another important one to discuss with your customer. All right, now we're going to get into the dealership specific questions. Where are these autos being purchased? How far away is the dealer going to purchase the autos? And how many autos are being sold annually? We're going to go to the next slide here. If the owner is going to an auction that's more than 300 miles away, maybe a couple times a year, we're going to need to know that so that we can extend their drive away miles. My carriers, their policies accommodate a 300-mile radius, but anything over that, it's not going to be covered. So God forbid they got in a car accident and they're 400 miles away, we wouldn't be able to consider that. So something to pay attention to there. And the number of vehicles sold per year is a factor in determining where I can take a risk, and the percentages below that is also a factor in how I can rate the risk. So retail would be your normal dealership where they sell to the public, the general public. A wholesale dealership is when they sell to other dealerships and not the general public. So a wholesale dealer isn't someone that is selling at wholesale prices. No, a wholesale dealer is when they are selling to dealerships and not the general public. And some dealerships may do a little bit of both, but typically one of these two categories is going to be heavier than the other. That third category, consignment, some dealers sell autos they don't own, and that's classified as consignment. And if this is the case, I'm going to be asking for a copy of the consignment agreement to make sure that agreement states the owner of the vehicle has coverage in place for the auto and is aware that test drives are going to be performed. And I also want to point out on this page, questions 26 and 27. The dealership owner needs to transfer the title of all owned autos to their business name in order for coverage to apply. If the owners are not transferring the title, we're not going to be able to cover that vehicle if there's a claim. And the last question here, number 29, is just asking about test drives. Answers to these questions are going to determine what coverage and what carrier I can go to. All right, now it's time to go through the repair section of the application. What types of repair work is being performed? Are they a paint shop? And are they offering any frame modification services, that's a heavy exposure there. The next slide right here shows a chart that needs to be completed and equal 100%, and breaks down all the different types of repair work that can be done. There is an other category if you don't see something maybe that fits what your client is doing. Just please don't write general repair in the other category. General repair will probably fall into those categories on the top left side of the chart. If you write general repair, I'm going to come back to you and ask you to split it out. So to save some time, just please try to find the appropriate box to fill it in. Of course, if you have any questions, reach out to me. The classifications on the right side and on the bottom of the left, those are pretty specialized operations. But again, feel free to reach out with any questions you have on while you're completing an app with your client. All right. General questions. There's a lot of general questions on here that are pretty self-explanatory, so I don't want to go through all of those. But the two big ones are the highlighted ones here regarding the spray booth and the frame questions. Painting is, it's a high pollution hazard and fire hazard. So we want to make sure that the proper safeguards are in place for eligibility. And then the frame cutting and or stretching, you are altering the vehicle. That's not something we would consider writing, but we can consider frame straightening if a proper machine is used, and that is actually question 35 there. And the last slide of this auto repair section, and if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide for me, please. All right, this last slide here in the repair section is loss history. And this is a great place for me to find additional credits that can be added to a quote. So, the more information provided, the better it is for your client. If no information is provided, then I'll probably have to add a new venture surcharge. So please try to add whatever information you have available on here. I'm not going to ask for loss runs up front unless they have had a loss. It's going to be a subject to binding. So complete this section the best you can. All right, the last section of our garage application are all the different coverages available: liability, your garage keepers, your dealer's physical damage, and other miscellaneous coverages that we will go through shortly. So your garage liability is general liability, but it also includes coverages that are specific for a garage application. So you're going to get your trip and fall coverage, but you're also going to get coverage for resulting damage from faulty work performed, liability for test drives, auction trips, things like that. All of these other coverages, I like to say it's a la carte. So all the other coverages can be added on separately. Your medical payments that are at the garage location, auto med pay, uninsured motorist coverage, personal injury protection. This one is not available in all states. And then you have your additional insured that can be added here.
Teresa, when they're trying to determine the coverage that's needed for the garage that they're working, the garage owner they're working with, how best can they gather this information? Because probably that owner doesn't know himself.
Yeah, sometimes they don't. So I mean, when you're talking about a repair shop, you want to know kind of how many autos they're going to have on the premise kind of at one time. That's going to help you figure out what we're going to hit next, which is the garage keepers coverage. And are they doing a lot of test drives? Because you're going to want to worry about the med pay, the auto med pay, in case they hit somebody that's maybe crossing the street. Yeah, and also how much money are they willing to spend on a policy too? Some people, they don't have a lot of money, so they're going to try to go as bare bones as they can. They're going to get their liability because they have to, to satisfy the landlord's lease. And then from there, you can kind of try adding on as much as you can. The garage keepers to cover the customer vehicles while they're in your care. You can get into the med pay and maybe, the broadened coverage, which we're going to hit on the next slide. So you can kind of piecemeal it together as best as you can, or you can just go big, get a quote with all, all the coverages we're discussing, and then kind of take them off. Because you're going to get a breakdown of all the different premium costs for each of those coverages, and if they're not willing to spend the $1,700, you can start kind of taking off a little bit here and there, letting them know what it covers, but taking it off if you need to be in their price range.
Got it. There's a question for you, Teresa.
Yeah.
Do your policies offer prior damage disclosure or coverage and/or auto dealers' legal defense coverage?
So the prior damage is not going to be covered. And the auto dealer's legal defense coverage, well, your liability, when you get the garage liability, you're going to have some defense coverage there. Maybe under the auto dealer's E&O, that may be something you need to add on to get more legal defense coverage. I guess it's going to depend on a claim situation.
Excellent.
All right, I'm going to go a little bit into the garage keepers here. So again, this is coverage for a customer's auto while it's in the insured's care, custody, and control. So this is mainly a coverage that a repair shop would want to have. Some dealerships may want a small amount of this coverage if they are test driving customers' vehicles. And the two types, you see there's two types right underneath there. There's legal liability and direct primary. Legal liability will cover a customer's auto if the insured is negligent for the cause of loss. And direct primary covers a customer's auto regardless of negligence. So direct primary is a little bit more expensive than legal liability, but it's a much broader coverage. So let's say there's a break-in and a car is vandalized. Direct primary would pick up the loss, but legal liability would not. So I would definitely always check mark direct primary. And you can also choose a cause of loss. There's specified causal loss with collision or comprehensive with collision. There's no premium difference here, depending on the one you choose. So it's definitely best to choose the broader coverage, which would be your comprehensive with collision. And there are different deductibles you can choose for your garage keepers. The optional wind and hail and optional theft deductible, those aren't something you need to worry about. If we need to add an optional deductible for those two, the carrier is going to apply them based on the type of risk. And towards the bottom there is in transit on hook coverage, which is for towing risks. I'll need to know how many tow trucks they have, the number of autos being towed at one time, and the per auto limit is actually going to match the garage keeper's per auto limit. But this is a great coverage to add on if there is any type of towing exposure. All right, now we're going to get into the dealer's physical damage, which is a covered for owned autos. So this is one that dealerships will want to have in order to cover their inventory. And this one actually has 3 causes of loss to choose from, with several. There's so many different deductible options to help bring down that premium for our insured. And again, there's no need to worry about those optional wind and hail and theft deductibles. We'll add them on if we have to. And then we have interest covered. So does the owner own the vehicles outright? Are some financed through a bank? Are some of the autos being consold at consignment? That's kind of what we're looking for there. And the other limits at temporary locations and while in transit are actually built into the policy form if they are in the insured's care. If the autos are not in the insured's care, like, they're with one of those subcontractors being worked on somewhere else, these coverages we need to be added on separately. It's really not something we typically see because we're going to want those other people to have coverage in place. But it's something we can discuss if that does present itself. And you can add lost payees here, and those drive-away miles that we spoke about a few slides ago. If they're going over that 300-mile radius, we're going to want to make sure that we add some extra miles to their policy. All right, and the last of the coverages available can be found here. We had that, remember that special slide earlier regarding the dealer and transporter registration plates? Well, if the applicant has any of those transporter or registration plates and they need coverage for those, we can add it here. False pretense is to get coverage for when a customer causes our insured to part ways with the vehicle by trickery. This is kind of a weird coverage, but it's an inexpensive one to add on. An example of when this would come into play is an unaccompanied test drive. Someone takes the vehicle for a test drive and never comes back. Another example is the insured was given a fraudulent money order for an auto sale. Those are false pretenses when would come into play if any of those things happened. And then you can get personal and advertising injury, your damage to rented premises, which is also known as fire legal liability. If your applicant wants both of those coverages, which typically they do, then we would actually add the next one, which is broadened coverage, because it encompasses both of those coverages. The drive other car are for dealership risks. It provides coverage when a furnished driver rents or borrows an auto they don't own. So let's say the owner of the dealership, who was a furnished driver, he flies to an auction and decides to rent a car while he's there. This would be a time when they may want to buy that coverage instead of purchasing the rental car coverage. You can also get your federal odometer E&O and your auto dealer's E&O coverages. And lastly, property. We can definitely add property to your garage policies. We would just ask that an Accord 140 be completed. All right, the takeaway. So I hope this helps understand, the different types of garage risks and how to insure them properly. Garage can kind of be a different language, so it's definitely a little tough to get into in the beginning, but hopefully we help you at least break the barrier going through the application, so you can help guide your client into what type of coverages they need. These garage applications are available on our website, and Jacob will be emailing a copy of this PowerPoint to you. And of course, anything else that's needed or any other questions you have, feel free to reach out to me. I believe my contact info is on the next slide.
It is. Great job, Teresa. Really good information, and really appreciate. I'm sure everyone appreciates it. So thank you all for joining us today. Teresa is your garage underwriter, so she is available. You can see her contact information to answer questions. You can get the app off of our website. It's easy to find under applications, and start submitting your garage applications today. Please visit our website, cidinsurance.com. There's lots of tools, marketing materials, and templates that we put together to assist you in running your agency more smoothly and building your commercial book of business. Thank you so much for joining us today.